Long ago, in a village nestled between two great rivers, there lived an old woman named Nana Afia. She was the oldest person in the village, and many people came to her for advice because she was known for her wisdom. Although she did not own great riches or have much power, her words were always respected, and the villagers loved her dearly. Nana Afia had lived through many seasons of change. She had seen floods sweep through the village and droughts that dried up the land. She had watched as children grew into adults and elders returned to the earth. Through all these experiences, she had learned one simple truth: patience and wisdom could solve any problem. One day, a great argument broke out in the village. It all began when the village's two wealthiest men, Kofi and Kojo, began to quarrel. Kofi owned the largest farm in the village, while Kojo was a fisherman who owned many boats. Both men were proud of their success, but their pride often turned into competition. The argument started over a patch of land by the river. Kofi claimed it was his, saying it would help expand his farm. Kojo argued that he had been using the riverbank for his fishing nets for years. Neither man was willing to back down, and soon the argument grew so heated that the entire village was drawn into it. Some villagers sided with Kofi, while others supported Kojo. The peaceful village was now divided, and the tension grew stronger each day. People stopped greeting one another, and friends became strangers as they argued about who was right. As the days passed, the village elders tried to mediate between Kofi and Kojo, but the men refused to listen. Both believed they were in the right, and neither was willing to compromise. The once happy village was filled with bitterness, and even the children could sense the unease in the air. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the village gathered around the central fire, Nana Afia stood up. She leaned on her walking stick and cleared her throat. Her voice was soft but firm as she spoke, and the entire village fell silent. "My children," she began, "I have lived a long life, and I have seen many disputes. This argument between Kofi and Kojo is no different from the others I have witnessed. When the rivers flood, the land is claimed by water. When the droughts come, the earth cracks, and the land becomes barren. But through all of this, the land remains the same. It does not change, even when we argue over it. We must remember that the land belongs to none of us, it belongs to the earth." The villagers listened closely, nodding in agreement with her words. Kofi and Kojo, however, remained silent, their eyes locked on the fire. Nana Afia continued, "I ask you all to come together tomorrow at dawn. We will go to the riverbank and settle this matter in a way that honors our ancestors and the spirits of the land." The villagers agreed, trusting in Nana Afia's wisdom. Kofi and Kojo, though still unwilling to give up their claims, agreed to meet at the riverbank, if only to show respect to the old woman. The next morning, as the first light of dawn touched the village, the people gathered at the riverbank. Kofi stood on one side, his arms crossed, while Kojo stood on the other, his face set with determination. Between them lay the disputed piece of land, a small stretch of fertile ground that both men believed was theirs. Nana Afia approached slowly, her walking stick tapping the ground with each step. When she reached the center of the group, she knelt down and ran her fingers through the soil. She then looked up at Kofi and Kojo, her gaze calm and steady. "My sons," she said softly, "you are both strong men, and you have both worked hard for what you have. But you must understand that this land does not belong to you alone. The land feeds all of us. The river flows for all of us. We are part of the earth, just as the earth is part of us. Kofi and Kojo said nothing, but they listened carefully. The old woman's words seemed to carry the weight of many generations. Nana Afia then stood up and faced the villagers. "Let me tell you a story," she began. "Long ago, when I was a little girl, there was a drought that lasted for 3 years. The crops failed, and the river dried up. People were hungry, and many left the village to find food elsewhere. But there was one family, a family of farmers, who remained. They had a small patch of land, and they worked tirelessly to grow food, even in the hard times. When their crops finally began to grow, they had enough to feed not only themselves but the entire village. The villagers looked at one another, remembering the hard times they had endured in the past. Nana Afia smiled gently. The family could have kept the food for themselves, but they chose to share it. Because of their generosity, the village survived the drought. The lesson, my children, is that we are stronger when we share. Greed divides us, but sharing brings us together." The old woman then turned back to Kofi and Kojo. "You both have much to offer this village. Kofi, your farm provides food for many, and Kojo, your fish feed countless families. Instead of fighting over this land, why not work together? Let Kofi use part of the land for his crops, and let Kojo continue to use the riverbank for his fishing nets. If you share this land, you will both prosper, and so will the village." Kofi and Kojo looked at each other, their pride still strong. But as they stood in the soft morning light, surrounded by their fellow villagers, they began to see the wisdom in Nana Afia's words. Kofi was the first to speak. "Nana Afia is right. The land does not belong to me alone. If Kojo is willing, I will share the land with him." Kojo nodded slowly, his anger softening. "I agree. We will work together, for the good of the village." The villagers cheered, relieved that the argument had finally been settled. Kofi and Kojo shook hands, and the tension that had divided the village disappeared like a cloud drifting away from the sun. From that day forward, the village became even stronger. Kofi and Kojo not only shared the land but also began to help each other in their work. Kofi's crops grew tall and plentiful, while Kojo's fishing nets brought in more fish than ever before. The village prospered, and the people lived in peace. As for Nana Afia, her wisdom was remembered by all. Whenever a problem arose in the village, the people would say, "What would Nana Afia do?" And they would seek her advice, knowing that her words carried the knowledge of many seasons. In time, Nana Afia grew older and eventually passed away, but her spirit remained with the village. Her lessons of patience, unity, and sharing were passed down to the children, who passed them down to their children. And so, the wisdom of the old woman lived on, guiding the village for many generations to come. The story of Nana Afia reminds us all that true strength comes not from power or wealth, but from wisdom and the willingness to share with others. In times of trouble, it is better to work together than to fight, for only then can a village truly thrive.